Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk to you about how to actually improve your research unit's performance. So, if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out. So, this video of how to actually improve your research unit's performance is really meant for research and development teams that are at universities, hospitals, corporations, so businesses. And it's probably going to be more oriented towards technology oriented firms and universities, particularly if those are within a moderate size lab or a moderate size research and development arm. The reason why I say that is because the larger corporations tend to have people that are going to help you out on this kind of stuff. So watching a YouTube video is not necessarily going to be all that beneficial, although it's definitely benefits anybody that is interested in this and wanting to sort of learn more about the management of dealing with research and development and really struggling and how to develop a high performing team in research and development. So the first thing I'm going to point out is if you are struggling with it right now and you don't know what to do, we all struggle with it, and it is really difficult to build a high performing team or a high performing organization. So don't worry about that at this moment. That's not the sort of thing that I want you to do. In fact, if you aim to build high performance, you're probably going to run into problems because you're going to create incentives within your company or your research arm, your R&D arm, that are going to be disincentives for people to actually perform really well and to do the things that they're supposed to be doing well. So that's what I want to point out is I'm not going to give you all the answers in this video because it is a really complicated problem. However, I'm going to give you some things that you might want to watch over and over and over again to sort of understand how to build a research and development arm that is going to be thriving and surviving in the long run. And it's going to take some time, right? So none of these are quick wins. If you're thinking that you can sort of change things within a year, you're mistaken. It's not going to take a year. It's probably going to take you 5 years by the time you actually start getting some real returns from the things I'm going to suggest. And there's a tremendous benefit of that because once you build in those real returns and you do the things that I suggest, you're really going to see sort of this path dependency that's built in. So what is path dependency? That's where things just keep going on their own and you're going to be impressed with the things that you're doing. And it's really based on some very simple sort of fundamental things. However, they do work, and it's kind of the basics of what we understand in the social sciences, and as well within strategy, within innovation. I'm read very broadly, and I know a lot of that research. Not probably, there's obviously some things that I don't know, but at the same time, there's sort of fundamental things that we would want to consider with this, right? So. And the other thing I want to point out, that's the other thing I want to point out, is that everybody's research and development arm, everybody's company, everybody's university is different, and you should treat them as differently, right? So this is not a one size fits all, and this is just kind of blanket things that we know. However, you're probably going to want to customize it to the management style that your university or your corporation has, your hospital has. At the same time, sort of trying to build in some of these things because I know it's a long run game, so it's hard to do these things. What I'm going to suggest, and so you really want to think about this. So, what are these things what are these things that you should sort of think about in terms of improving your research unit's performance? So the biggest thing that we can do is really focus on the culture of your organization that you have, or your research unit that you have, that's going to generate bigger returns in the long run. And it's not because the returns come from the immediate people that are there, but often it will come from, it becomes a very attractive place to be and people want to go there, and then you're going to be able to recruit better people and more interesting people that are going to sort of pull up everybody within the organization and do well that way. And so that's why it's a really long run game, is that it really takes a long time to build this culture, right? So if you've watched these reciprocity videos, they've taken a long time before other people start watching them, and it becomes sort of a cultural thing, and it's fully expected that it's going to be a cultural thing. However, that being said, after a few years of doing this, people are starting to reach out, and they're starting to recognize that the institution that I'm at is actually a really great institution, and we're building this in and doing some of these things ourselves within the institution that we're at, and it's doing quite well with some of these things. So first thing is, make sure that you really build in psychological safety in your research unit. So what is that? That is the feeling. And so you can look at Amy Edmondson. She's at Harvard right now. She's done a lot of research on psychological safety. And what she's looked at is basically in hospitals and research arms and stuff like that, that if you are surgical units specifically, if you are able to speak up when there is a problem or when there's something that you don't feel comfortable with, and you could speak up and feel okay with speaking up, that is psychological safety. So you want to be able to create an environment where people are okay with speaking up or raising concerns, and that they actually get addressed, and that they feel welcome when they raise concerns, or the fact that you're going to be on their side and everybody else is going to be on their side and sort of look out for them when they have particular concerns. That's really tricky to do. That's why it takes a long time to do these things. However, I believe that there was Google looked into trying to build the ultimate team, right? Google is kind of the science-oriented thing, and they spent large amounts of money. I don't exactly know what it was in terms of the money that they spent on this study, and they found out psychological safety is like the most important thing in terms of building a culture of that people are actually going to thrive, and it's going to build everything up going forward. And once you get that started, that psychological safety where people feel okay to do things, not only to speak up, but also to do things that are creative and innovative. Those things are really scary for most people, right? So what is creativity? Creativity is basically doing new and useful things and creating new and useful ideas. And innovation is creating new and useful things that solve a problem. So in order for people to do things that are new or novel, they deviate from the norm. They deviate what people expect. And those are really scary for most people. There's a lot of uncertainty, ambiguity in how you're going to be treated when you have these particular ideas. So if you can build in a culture that says, okay, I understand that that's kind of kooky, but I like the idea, let's run with it. Or, you're feeling, I can't believe you're feeling like that at this moment. We really need to change that, and we really need to work on that. If you build those sort of responses into what you're doing and really back up the people that are doing the things that they're doing, you're going to see tremendous returns from what you're actually doing, right? So that's the biggest thing in terms of improving your research unit's performance, because then it becomes really attractive, because people say, hey, they're doing weird things there, and people are okay with doing weird things. I'm going to go check them out. And so people that are are typically very productive tend to be a little kooky at the same time, and so you want to encourage those people to come in and be okay within your organization. The other thing is, and this builds into the cultural sort of aspect of it, in we make this mistake. So most corporations, most research units make this mistake that we reward productivity only. That's not what you should be doing. What you should be doing is rewarding both productivity, but also the fact that people are being nice, and you're encouraging people to be nice within your research unit and with other people outside of the research unit, right? So if you want your maybe it's your department that you have and you want it to thrive, you want it to be the go-to place where people feel comfortable from all around the organization. and outside of the organization come and talk to you and get some answers. And what this does, and sort of really what it builds into, is that people start going to you as a source, and then when they have problems, they're going to say, can you solve this problem for me? And I will pay you to solve that problem. And pretty soon you have different revenue streams to do those things. Now, it's a long run play again, and that's why people get tripped up on this, is that we get focused so much on the metrics and we get focused so much on productivity. We don't look at the long run aspects of this kind of stuff. So anything that is outreach in any sort of way, what is called building social capital, that's where you're outreaching within the organization. Outside of the organization is a total waste, right? So you're going to perceive this as a total cost center. Birthday cakes, that's why I talk about with my students, how do you actually build a social capital within your organization? It's birthday cakes. But birthday cakes are expensive. If you give birthday cakes to everybody and you do celebrate everything, and you do these kind of things, right? So outreach, doing YouTube videos, all those kind of things, that consumes a tremendous amount of time and effort that pulls me, it pulls other researchers away from the things that they're doing. However, in the long run, there is some benefit of that, because it sort of makes what you're doing attractive, and other people see that and they want to actually do those particular things, and all of a sudden you become the go-to, where people are where people ask you questions, and you just become part of the zeitgeist. You're like, oh, did you watch so and so do this particular thing? Or that was an incredibly nice thing that somebody did for me in my organization. They got me a birthday cake. I'm really excited to be here. And what's really cool with some of those things is high-performing people love, first of all, they love getting rewards like that. The other thing that we know is that you can pay people, I know this is kind of like the awful way to look at it, but you can pay people less if you're nice to them, and there's a really nice culture there, right? So the efficiencies are there. Simply because you're just treating other people with respect, you're being really nice, and you're really being caring with the things that you're doing. Again, it's a long run play. You're looking at 5 to 10 years out. However, there are returns from doing those particular things, right? The other thing that you should be doing is, when you have problems, you have to be really open with those problems and consult input from other sources within the organization with people, and just being open with those things and saying, we have a problem. We really could use this. Now, you don't want to waste everybody's time all the time in terms of all problems that exist, but with problems that matter, you probably should be getting input from other people. That gets buy-in, stakeholder buy-in, gets everybody sort of on board, and they feel much more like a team than they do as you being, a boss, or feeling like a subordinate, or being sort of an outsider within the organizational unit that you're actually building, right? So that's a really important thing to think about going forward, is trying to be transparent with your problems. Now, that's hard to tell people what your problems are, because nobody likes to reveal their problems. And it's going to take a lot of work, and that's where psychological safety comes in, because if you can show that you are talking about your problems and your personal problems, that is how you actually build teams, right? So firefighting organizations, so firefighters, police organizations, ambulances, they have these sort of post-mortem reviews, right? Where you can go after you had a traumatic experience and just talk to people about this traumatic experience, where you talk about the things that really bother you, and that military does that as well, or they should be doing it if they don't. So it's this kind of quote unquote, and I hate this term because it's sexist, but it's the brotherhood, where you feel like you're part of something. So you feel like you're part of a family when you can reveal your problems and things that you're dealing with, no matter what it is, and being open with those things, right? So that involves even things that are going on in your home, that involves sort of in general things that are going on in your life, because that really builds, it just makes it feel like anything is okay to talk about, and that everybody is going to work together towards that particular thing. And if you can build that culture, that's going to go a long ways. The other thing that you want to be considering with your rewards, for example, is to reward both the individuals and teams, right? So we tend to, in high performing research units and research arms in universities particularly, we tend to reward individuals in the sense that you just give rewards to people that are performing X amount. But you want to actually build in incentives where you build rewards for the team as well. So if you reach a certain goal as a team, I don't know what it is in terms of what you're measuring, right? So maybe you're looking at, publications within a university, for example. So if your entire unit reaches X number of, citations, publications, whatever, that you're going to reward everybody with a pizza party. Well, that goes a long ways. It's really inexpensive, but it goes a long ways in terms of celebrating everybody's success, because people do, it's not just the one individual that is high performing. That's a component of it, right? But it's the whole everything that allows that to happen, right? So if somebody is high performing in terms of research, then you want to have other people that are maybe doing teaching, which is going to pull back from their research, and it's sort of, they have to work together as a community. And so the same thing happens within businesses as well, in business units where they work together as a community. And the more that you can sort of reward both of those, and not reward so much, just only a little bit, individuals, you can really pick up the productivity within your research unit, right? So you want to balance that and find the sort of sweet spot where you're rewarding the team, or sets of teams, and as well as the individuals for however you're actually measuring performance within your organization. Now, the last thing is really simple, and this is probably the easiest thing for you to implement this moment if you're watching this, and you're in some sort of leadership position, or if you're not, just have coffee breaks with people, and chat with people in the hallway. Just stop and talk to them. And what this does, it might seem like, oh, this is a total waste of time. Again, all of this is a waste of time if you take that view. None of the stuff is going to be rewarding in the short term, but it's a simple trick to win the hearts of people. And that's going to be really important going forward in terms of building this culture where people want to be there, and that they are really excited to be there. And then they start inviting other people, and you can ask those people, who do you know that's a top performer in your group, in your peer group, that would love to come and work here? And as soon as you can get that, people are going to be really excited to be at your organization just by doing those real simple things where you're just, chatting with people, really showing them that you care. And so that's why it's really like coffee breaks, taking them out for a coffee, really inexpensive, but it shows people that you care and you're looking out for them. And that goes a tremendous long ways. Even though it's going to feel at that moment that you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, but it's not. It's actually very rewarding, because there's a whole social component that you forget about when you are building an organization, and the culture within the organization, that those little wasted resources go a long ways in terms of building the kind of organization that people really want to be at. And so if you can do this and really work on, things in psychological safety, rewarding people for being nice, being transparent with your problems, and rewarding individuals and teams, especially teams, to work together, and then just doing simple things like having coffee breaks, maybe bringing in cookies once in a while, really simple things like that just go so far in terms of building an organization and building a research unit that it's just going to thrive going forward. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.